Alex will be terminated by the end of this week. In other words, he's fired.
The announcement was so shocking that I couldn't help but speak out. What? By the end of this week? That's ridiculous.
It's the president's decision. He says we don't need employees who disrupt the harmony by defying their managers.
I was taken aback by the answer that was completely off my radar. But then it all made sense. He must have badmouthed me at the executive meeting. Understood. It was tough having an incompetent subordinate. I looked up and said with a smile,
What should we do now? Hey, you guys, do something. Get our clients back on board.
The frantic yelling of James, the director, was futile. Mark, the president, also stood dumbfounded in the noisy sales department.
Why? Why has everything gone downhill just because Alex, the section chief, is gone? We did what James said and fired the disruptive employee.
He turned to me and opened his mouth timidly.
Alex, who are you really? As soon as you left, all our deals disappeared.
I'm Alex Miller, a 60-year-old employee. I was born and raised in a downtown area bustling with small factories. Since I grew up watching various metalworking processes like lathe and painting in the factories, it was only natural for me to work for a metal manufacturer. Thanks to that, I still get along well with the craftsmen who run the factories in the downtown area. Although I became a company employee, or rather than a craftsman, growing up in a neighborhood brimming with humanity made interacting with people effortless for me. In fact, I even feel like talking to someone at times. And so, I joined a metal manufacturer that supplies materials to many factories. Since joining this company straight out of high school, I've worked diligently for over 40 years, dedicating myself entirely to it. It's deeply moving to think that I'll soon be retiring. The company I work for is one of the country's leading and oldest metal manufacturers. I love this company because it still upholds its traditional name, even in modern times. Today, as usual, I am visiting factories to take orders for metal materials, listening to what the clients desire. My clients are mostly small-scale factories in the downtown area. I enjoy visiting these local factories so much that the size of the contracts doesn't really matter to me. Rather, I enjoy scouting out factories. And because of that, the number of contracts keeps increasing. Even though the contracts are small, I'm securing a substantial number of them, so there's no problem with my performance. For large-scale deals like shipbuilding or heavy machinery, I leave those to a more aggressive colleague. Indeed, balancing contracts with both small downtown factories and large manufacturers is crucial. The small factories often make essential parts for machinery. Even if the contract amounts are small, as long as the main contractors continue to order, there will be no interruption in the contracts. For large contracts, the risk of significant cancellations due to economic fluctuations is high. So securing a contract doesn't mean you can relax. In this respect, I am grateful to be able to split the sales efforts with my colleagues. We are in an ideal situation, acquiring both large and small contracts, with many continuing over time. The company's performance is stable, and although not perfect, the company offers excellent employee benefits, so I have no complaints. However, even in the best of companies, there are always some problematic aspects. In the case of TOA mining, it's the senior management. First, the president, Mark Hall. He's a very kind man who genuinely cares for his employees and enhances their benefits. However, he's simply not cut out for managing a company. He's too quick to trust others and often neglects necessary verifications, risking the company's fortune several times. Our company has faced bankruptcy more than once due to Mark's careless actions. After crossing several dangerous bridges, it seems he has finally learned his lesson, and recently he has been requesting verification from the Vice President, Mike Harris. Still, every time he requests a verification from Mike, he seems to feel guilty, saying, "It's a shame to doubt someone who has trusted us." While things have improved since Mike got involved, it's dubious whether Mark truly relies on him. And then there's another person, James Clark, the director of the sales department. To say he's my nemesis would not be an exaggeration. He's a troublesome person who looks down on his subordinates and tries to impose unreasonable quotas on them. Despite that, he lacks knowledge of sales and can hardly give any concrete instructions. In short, he's a boss who only talks a good game.
Hey, what's with these numbers? They're exactly the same as last month. Get 150% of last month's contracts.
That's impossible. The rising oil prices have increased the transportation costs of the raw materials we use. Maintaining the same figures as last month is due to the goodwill of our clients. We can't ask for more. I'm the oldest in the sales department. Since I'm leaving the company soon, I try to be the one to speak up against the manager.
Alex. He gets all high and mighty just because he's older.
He always tries to assert his authority as a manager and make me obey. But it's also my job to protect the junior staff and other subordinates. Mike has instructed us to maintain the status quo until the oil prices stabilize. We're in an industry affected by the global economy and market trends, so it's impossible to consistently achieve 150% of last month's figures. I've gotten used to these frequent arguments with manager, as I've repeatedly rebutted his unreasonable demands. However, when it happens so often, I can't help but complain. A sales manager who is oblivious to the global economy, market trends, and futures prices, how incompetent can you get? Thankfully, my younger colleagues look up to me. Recently, it seems like my repeated rebuttals of James have strengthened our relationship. Many of them often seek my advice, and we frequently have lively discussions about sales strategies around my desk in the office. Since these are constructive discussions about work, the section chief doesn't say anything, and I believe it's a useful way to train younger employees and improve our results. However, James seems to find this annoying and often picks fights with us.
You guys have some nerve chit-chatting during work hours. What's the point of being friendly with someone you're supposed to compete with for contracts?
We're exchanging information about our sales efforts, so it's not idle talk. Also, we don't rank our performance, and there's no concept of competing for contract amounts. Recently, it seems like my repeated rebuttals of James have strengthened our relationship.
Competing helps improve results.
James tried to intimidate me with a loud voice, but I calmly responded. Healthy competition for improvement is good, but there's no need to compete for rankings without reason. Meaningless competition can lead to issues like fraudulent contracts. Once again, I completely refuted his unreasonable demands. He glared at me, grinding his teeth.
Alex, you better think about what happens if you keep defying your boss.
He left with the usual empty threat. As he walked away, I stuck out my tongue and muttered softly, "I'm about to retire anyway, so I don't care what my evaluation ends up being." However, I underestimated his parting words as mere frustration. I never imagined he'd use Mark, the well-meaning company head, to try to bring me down. With my retirement just around the corner, I've been busy with handovers and farewells to clients. But one thing has been bothering me. James, who used to constantly hassle me, suddenly became quiet. He didn't talk to me or yell at other employees. The office was calm, as it should be. However, having been hassled daily, the absence of conflict made me uneasy. I had a bad feeling. Apparently, so did the other employees. In the morning, everyone worked with a sense of unease, puzzled by the unusual atmosphere. Furthermore, with the senior staff in a sudden executive meeting, we couldn't figure out what James was planning. When the meeting ended, he returned to his desk with a big smile. Perhaps one of his proposals was approved. He was in an unusually good mood, almost eerily so.
Whoa, what's with that smile?
He's definitely up to something.
Do you think he has something planned for Alex?
The younger employees whispered among themselves, feeling like my bad premonition might come true. I braced myself.
I am here to announce the decision made at the recent executive meeting.
James declared that loudly.
Alex will be terminated by the end of this week. In other words, he's fired.
The announcement was so shocking that I couldn't help but speak out. What? By the end of this week? That's ridiculous. I still had over 2 months left before my retirement. I had been using my leave days strategically since the beginning of the year, so there shouldn't be any major changes. Other employees started murmuring as well. I was supposed to have more time before my retirement. Can you explain why my duties are ending at the end of this week? I calmly turned to face him. If this was just another one of his arbitrary decisions, I could refute it. Even as a manager, he doesn't have the authority to hire or fire employees. But his response was completely unexpected.
It's the president's decision. He doesn't need employees who disrupt harmony by constantly defying their managers.
I was momentarily surprised by his answer, but soon understood everything. He must have badmouthed me during the executive meeting. Then he appealed to the president's emotions.
Even when I try to provide good guidance, Alex ruins it by being defiant.
Mark is a kind-hearted person, so he must have easily believed James. I could almost picture the scene at the executive meeting. I let out a big sigh. Understood. It was tough dealing with such an incompetent subordinate. I raised my head and said this with a smile, perhaps thinking my smile was just bravado. James laughed loudly.
Now my bonus will increase. Mark said my efforts in guiding you will be rewarded by redirecting your salary to me.
What a ridiculous statement. Even if it is Mark's decision, such absurdity won't stand. A company where everything is decided by the president alone won't last long. If there's an opportunity to leave, it's best to do so before it affects you. James is truly incompetent for not understanding something so simple. I took a deep breath and spoke to him. Since today is Friday, I guess my duties are officially over. I won't be coming in from next week, so please take care of things. I said my parting words and started clearing my desk. My younger colleagues watched me nervously. I reassured them. I'll be done packing soon. Don't worry. Focus on your own work. After clearing my desk, I carried my box of personal items and left the office. As I sat down in the break area to take a breath, my phone rang. It was from Mike. He, as the vice president, was originally designated as president's successor. The president lacked the necessary toughness as a leader, so the vice president had to step up to protect the company. Mike has the better leadership qualities. Mark is kind and focused on employee welfare and benefits. However, Mike has the kind of compassion needed to lead a company. Whenever there's a chaotic decision like this, he steps in to check and follow up. Naturally, he understands the work much better than people like James. And there have been times when I've wished Mike was our direct superior. Without Mike, our company would have already gone bankrupt. Many employees understand and appreciate Mike's efforts and achievements. As an older employee, I felt especially obligated to understand and support him as the vice president. I actively reached out to him and helped with any work I could. Through this, Mike and I grew closer. He was incredibly quick to act. "Hello, Mike. I'm honored to receive a call from you directly. Is there something you need?"
This is no time for jokes. Did James really announce your termination?
He sounded extremely agitated. It's no wonder, considering such an absurd decision was made at the executive meeting. Yes, he was thrilled, saying my bonus would go to him. I replied with a laugh, and I could sense his anger on the other end of the line.
James is truly incompetent. Alex, can I have a bit of your time? That termination wasn't done through the proper procedures and is therefore invalid. I want you to work until your planned retirement.
He was likely planning to convince Mark, using the improper procedure as leverage. I appreciated the opportunity to continue working until my retirement. Thank you, Mike. But since James is in such a good mood, can I take a week off starting next week, using my paid leave, and pretend I've been fired?
That sounds like a good plan. It might be better if you stay out of sight. I'm sorry for the surprise. I'll handle the leave paperwork and get back to you after convincing Mark.
I felt reassured by his words and hung up the phone. However, there was no need to wait for his persuasion. On Monday afternoon, when I was pretending to be fired and on leave, an unprecedented situation arose.
What's going on? Why are we getting so many termination notices from our clients?
In the office, James was in a panic. Phone calls kept coming in, most of them about stopping transactions. The section chief seemed resigned, perhaps knowing the reason. The answer was simple. In the morning, the sales team had informed our clients about my situation. I was supposed to continue working and introduce my successor to our clients. Without those formalities, the clients grew suspicious and demanded explanations from our representatives. And they learned about my situation. The small factories I managed were furious and halted transactions. Additionally, mid-sized clients, worried about the company's absurd handling of the situation, also decided to stop doing business with us. Even our major clients, who relied on parts from the small factories, notified us they would stop transactions due to the halted supply. In other words, all transactions were suspended. With inventory reserved for these transactions, our company faced significant losses if the stock couldn't be sold. Just that day, we were looking at an estimated loss of $50 million from the suspended transactions. If we couldn't clear the inventory, that $50 million would turn into a direct deficit.
What should we do? Hey, do something. Get our clients back on board.
He shouted desperately, but it was no use. Being incompetent as he was, he couldn't give specific instructions or think to meet with the clients himself. Mark stood in the chaotic sales department, bewildered.
Why? How could this happen just because Alex is gone? We dismissed him as James suggested to restore harmony.
You guys do something. If this continues, our company will go bankrupt.
James' shouting echoed through the office for the entire day. There was utter chaos throughout the company on Monday and Tuesday. As the company was facing a crisis, Mike likely had no time to persuade Mark about my issue. On Wednesday evening, I finally received a call from Mike, asking me to come to the office the next day. On Thursday morning, I knocked on the door of the president's office. "This is Alex. Excuse me." As I entered the office, I saw Mark and James, both looking pale, sitting there. By contrast, Mike stood beside them, his face red with anger. Mark looked at me and hesitantly spoke.
Alex, just who are you? The moment you left, all our transactions stopped.
Following Mark's words, James angrily confronted me.
Alex, you must have said something strange to our clients. Otherwise, this doesn't make sense. Confess and make sure the clients resume their transactions.
Oh dear, does James still not understand the reason for this uproar? I wondered where to begin my explanation. I noticed Mike trembling with rage, looking like he was about to explode. If left unchecked, he probably would have grabbed James. I spoke up, sounding exasperated. I didn't do anything. I just stepped away from my duties as per the president's decision. However, my clients valued me greatly. Some clients were angry about how I was treated. Others were worried about future dealings. And some had to halt operations because their suppliers stopped working. There are many reasons for the transaction suspensions. There's nothing I can do on my own. James turned even paler at my words.
That can be. Not just the small factories you managed, but even the major clients.
Once we developed a relationship with one client, the connections helped us expand our business. I said it was tough dealing with an incompetent subordinate because you didn't understand these dynamics. Mark, looking uneasy, asked me hesitantly,
Would the clients who were angry about the way you were treated resume transactions if we rescinded your termination? If they did, maybe the primary contractors would also restart operations and transactions.
Mark was clearly not cut out to be a leader. Lost trust isn't easily regained. Mike seemed resigned and looked at me with an expression of complete exasperation. Our company's handling of this situation has given the impression that our executive team makes arbitrary personnel decisions. Due to this incident, our company now has the impression of arbitrary personnel management by the executives. A drop in our reputation is inevitable. I don't know how our clients will react or what we can do about it. Oh, and I forgot to mention, my termination was declared invalid. Even though it was the president's decision, it was done without proper procedures and was a one-sided notification. I left the president's office. Thus, the commotion about my termination was resolved peacefully. I heard that after that, Mark got a severe scolding from Mike. He was reprimanded for believing James's lies without question. Usually, he relies on Mike for verification, but this time he made the personnel decision on his own without waiting for Mike's confirmation. Mike also berated him for attempting to reallocate my salary to James without following company policies. Due to these reckless actions, Mark was reprimanded for his lack of managerial awareness for a significant amount of time. Subsequently, it was decided at the shareholders' meeting that he would step down to a non-executive chairman role. There was no escaping the responsibility for causing a complete halt in transactions and a $50 million deficit. Mike temporarily took over the president's duties and began searching for a suitable successor. James was also severely reprimanded by plotting against me. He had exposed his own incompetence. He was held accountable for triggering the $50 million loss. and was censured and demoted at a disciplinary meeting by the executives. He was also transferred to a minor position at a small regional branch. Considering the chaos he caused due to his personal vendetta, this was quite a lenient punishment. But even this was beyond his understanding.
I climbed all the way to a department head position at headquarters. How could this happen to me?
His situation had reversed, and now he was the one being assigned impossible tasks. I hoped he would reflect on his past actions. Gradually, our company resumed its transactions. The thought of what might have happened if the transaction suspensions had continued sent chills down my spine. We've managed to avoid bankruptcy, and I can look forward to a peaceful retirement. 2 months later, my retirement was just around the corner. I walked through the local industrial district in my hometown. I wouldn't be visiting for work anymore, but I still wanted to come here. Maybe I'll find a job doing clerical work or deliveries, or perhaps I'll visit just to see the factories. I couldn't help but think about such things. The people at the factories had always valued me. During my time at our company, I had conducted business with sincerity. That's why I believe I've reached my retirement smoothly. If you live only for your own convenience, you'll get burned. It's by valuing each other that we can live in peace. I muttered this to myself as I pondered the rest of my life.